People hear that number and they assume I'm bragging. 37 countries. And maybe there's a small part of me that likes saying it, the way anyone likes saying a thing that took them a long time to earn. But I'm telling you the number because it matters to the point I'm about to make. Because when I say nothing comes close to living in the Philippines, I need you to understand that I am not a woman who ran out of options and settled. I am not someone who stumbled onto one good thing and decided it was the best thing because she hadn't seen enough to compare. I have seen enough to compare. I have stood on a glacier in Iceland watching the light turn colors that don't have names. I have eaten my way through a market in Marrakesh that made every other market I'd ever visited seem apologetic by comparison. I have ridden a night train through the Swiss Alps, walked the old city in Dubrovnik, sat in a cafe in Hanoi, drinking coffee with condensed milk, watching motorbikes stream past like a river with its own logic. I have been to countries that will take your breath away with their beauty and leave you hollow, because beauty, it turns out, is not the same as belonging. 37 countries, 15 years of serious travel after my kids left home, and I finally had the time and the stubbornness to go looking for the thing I couldn't quite name. And nothing, not one of those 37 countries, has done what the Philippines did. Let me tell you what it did, and let me tell you why nothing else came close. My name is Patricia. I'm 69 years old. I was a high school English teacher in Portland, Oregon for 28 years, which gave me summers, and summers gave me the world, or as much of it as a teacher's salary and a fierce determination could manage. I was married, briefly and amicably, in my early 30s. No children from that marriage. I have a son from a relationship before that, Daniel, who is 41 now and lives in Denver and thinks his mother is wonderful and slightly exhausting, which I consider an accurate assessment. I started traveling seriously at 52 after my mother died and left me a modest inheritance and the clear understanding that time was not a renewable resource. I did the sensible tourist things first. Europe, which was magnificent and crowded and exactly like the photographs. Southeast Asia, which knocked me sideways with its heat and color and the particular quality of chaos that somehow always resolved itself. Central America. Parts of Africa that rearranged my understanding of what a landscape could be. Japan, twice, because Japan demands a second visit in the way that some arguments demand a second reading. Each place taught me something. Each place was extraordinary in its own register. And each place, when I left it, felt like leaving a very good museum, richer for the visit, ready to go home. That was the pattern for 15 years. Go, experience, leave, return to Portland, repeat. I retired at 64, and the question that retirement asked me very immediately and with some insistence was the same question all that travel had been quietly circling for 15 years without answering. Where do you actually want to be? Not visit, not pass through, not collect. Where do you want to wake up every morning and feel that the morning belongs to you and you belong to it? I had been to 36 countries by the time I retired, and not one of them had answered that question. Which was why, when my friend Carolyn mentioned the Philippines almost in passing, she'd been watching videos, she said, about American women retiring there, and had I ever considered it, I had already started to wonder if the answer existed at all. I want to tell you about the 36 countries before the Philippines, because the contrast is the whole story, and I don't want to shortchange it. Portugal was the closest I'd come. I spent 2 months in Lisbon at 63, the year before I retired, testing the idea of living somewhere rather than visiting it. Lisbon is extraordinary. Those tiles, that light, the particular melancholy beauty of fado music heard through an open window on a narrow street. I loved it with the full capacity of my love for beautiful things, which is considerable, and I was lonely in it with an equal completeness, because Lisbon, for all its beauty, did not particularly notice me. I was a tourist with a longer lease, and it treated me accordingly. I walked its beautiful streets and ate its beautiful food and sat in its beautiful cafes and remained, throughout, a visitor, warmly received and utterly peripheral. Thailand was the same, differently. Chiang Mai, which I'd heard about from everyone who'd been there, was genuinely magical. The temples, the food markets, the mountains, the gentle pace of life. I stayed 6 weeks. I meditated. I ate pad thai at street stalls that cost $1 and tasted like someone had invested decades in the recipe. I went on a cooking class and a cooking class and another cooking class because the food was that extraordinary. And I remained, throughout 6 weeks, a farang, the Thai word for foreigner, which in Thailand carries a weight you only fully feel when you realize it never comes off. No matter how long you stay, no matter how genuinely you try, there is a membrane between you and the life happening around you that politeness maintains perfectly, and warmth never quite dissolves. Mexico I loved. I spent 3 months in Oaxaca the year I retired, and I think about it regularly with a deep affection. The food, which is its own argument for the existence of something worth living for, the colors of the buildings, the markets, the warmth of the people, which was genuine and real. But Mexico, for a woman traveling alone, required a constant low-grade vigilance that I simply accepted as the cost of being there. Not danger exactly, just the persistent awareness of your own foreignness and vulnerability that takes something from you over time, a kind of tax you pay in attention. I could do this for all 36. Each one gave me something. Each one, when I left, remained a place I had visited. Beautiful, instructive, foreign. Mine in memory only. The Philippines was number 37, and I almost didn't go. What finally sent me was a conversation with a woman I met at a travel forum in Portland, 18 months after I'd retired. She was 71, recently widowed, had just returned from 8 months in Dumaguete. She was not the kind of woman who oversells things. She spoke quietly and precisely, a retired librarian from Seattle, and she described life in the Philippines with an accuracy I've come to recognize as the mark of someone telling the truth rather than performing an experience. She said, "The difference is that they let you in. In most countries, you're tolerated as a visitor. There, they simply let you in. I don't fully understand it, but that's what happens." I wrote that down. I read it 3 more times on the drive home, and then I went home and spent 2 months researching and booked a flight to Cebu. I landed in Manila on a Tuesday evening in March, connected to Cebu the next morning, and arrived in Dumaguete by late afternoon, which is to say I arrived in the heat, which is always the first negotiation with this country. Dumaguete heat in March is warm and close and immediate, not the punishing dry heat of the Middle East or the aggressive wet heat of Bangkok, but a warm that settles around you with a kind of permanence, like it has decided to stay and isn't asking permission. The guest house was clean and simple, run by a woman named Mrs. Tan, who showed me to my room with the efficiency of someone who had been doing exactly this for 30 years and had no patience for complications, which I respected immediately. She told me dinner was at 7 if I wanted it, that the palenque opened at 5:30 in the morning if I was interested, and that the boulevard was worth walking in the evening. 3 pieces of information, all useful. No upselling. I liked her enormously. I walked the boulevard that first evening, as instructed. And here is where I need to tell you something that I have thought about many times since, and still cannot fully explain. I had walked the seafront in Barcelona. I had walked the Corniche in Beirut. I had walked the waterfront in Cape Town at sunset, which may be the most purely beautiful thing I have seen in my life. I knew what walking a city's waterfront felt like. I had reference points. The boulevard in Dumaguete is not spectacular. I want to be accurate about this. It is not Cape Town. It is not dramatic in any postcard sense. It is a long road along the water with a low seawall and large old acacia trees and a view of the Bohol Strait, which is lovely but not extraordinary. What is extraordinary is what happens on it every evening, which is that the entire city comes out. Not for any occasion. not for a festival or a market or a special event, just because it is evening and that is what you do. Families with children, old couples, university students in loose clothes, vendors selling grilled bananas and corn and ice cream from carts, old men playing chess at small tables with the unhurried certainty of people who have no competing appointments. Children running with the pure locomotive joy of children who have not yet learned that enthusiasm requires justification. I walked through all of it slowly. A 64-year-old woman from Portland who had walked waterfronts on 4 continents, and I felt something I had not felt on any of them. I felt like I was inside something rather than moving past it. I could not have explained why then. I have been working on explaining it ever since. The first 2 weeks I did what I always do, which is move through a new place systematically, deliberately, trying to understand its logic. I went to the Palenque every morning. I ate everywhere I could find. I walked every street in the center of town. I talked to everyone who would talk to me and paid careful attention to everything they said. And everywhere I went, something happened that had not happened in 36 other countries. People were glad to see me, not in the way that tourist economies produce gladness, the professional warmth of someone who needs your money, in the way that neighborhoods produce gladness, the way your regular coffee shop is glad to see you not because of your order, but because you are a regular presence that has become, over time, part of the expected texture of the day. This happened within 2 weeks. I was not a regular presence. I had been there 14 days, and yet the fish vendor at the Palenque remembered what I'd bought the previous 3 mornings and asked if I wanted the same. The woman at the small carinderia where I ate most lunches had started putting aside the dish she knew I liked before I arrived. The man at the corner who sold newspapers had begun greeting me in English that he was clearly practicing specifically for our daily exchange, and which I found so genuine and so careful that I made sure to arrive at the same time every morning so as not to disappoint him. In Lisbon, I spent 2 months eating at the same cafe 3 times a week, and the staff never recognized me. 14 days in Dumaguete, and the city was learning my preferences. That is the difference I am trying to describe. That is what no other country did. I spent 3 months on that first trip. Then I went home to Portland, which I had told myself was still home, and sat in my apartment and looked at the gray sky and waited to feel the contentment of returning to familiar things. It came, partially. Portland is a good city, and I am fond of it. But it came the way a sweater you've outgrown comes when you put it on. Familiar in shape, no longer quite fitting. I was back in Dumaguete 4 months later. This time, I rented an apartment. This time, I stayed 8 months. Let me tell you what I found in those 8 months that I had not found in 36 other countries, because I want to be specific rather than sentimental. And I think the specifics are what will mean something to you. I found mornings. That sounds so small that I almost didn't write it, but I mean it with complete seriousness. I found mornings as a category of experience I had not previously accessed. In Portland, mornings were a transition, a period between sleep and the day's demands, to be managed efficiently and escaped from quickly. In every country I had visited, mornings were a logistical matter, when things opened and how early you could get to them. In Dumaguete, mornings became the point. The Palenque before the heat arrived, the cup of Barako coffee, the strong, dark, locally grown kind, taken to the small balcony of my apartment while the street woke up below me. The 20 minutes of doing nothing purposeful, watching the tricycles and the vendors and the school children in their uniforms, the day beginning without me having to manage it. I had not known that was available. I had been managing mornings for 60 years. I found food as an act of relationship rather than an act of consumption. This sounds like something you'd read in a food magazine, but I mean it practically. In every other country I'd traveled, even the ones with extraordinary food, eating was something that happened between me and a plate. Here, eating was something that happened between me and the people who fed me. Nana at the carinderia who knew my order, the woman at the market who saved me the good mangoes, the neighbor who knocked on my apartment door with a container of something she'd made too much of, which I came to understand was less about abundance and more about a cultural language of care that operates through food the way other cultures operate through words. I was being spoken to in a language I hadn't known existed, and once I understood it, I heard it everywhere. I found the particular comfort of being known by a place. In 36 countries, I had been known by no place. I had passed through, observed, appreciated, and departed, leaving no impression and carrying only memories. Here, by month 3 of that second visit, I was a regular. I had a table at a cafe near the university that was understood to be mine on Thursday mornings. I had a route on the boulevard that the chessmen expected me to take and greeted me along. I had a doctor who knew my history and a pharmacist who had my prescriptions ready without being called. These are small things. They are the entire architecture of belonging. I want to tell you about the countries that came closest, because I think it's important to be fair and specific, and because some of you watching this have been to places you loved, and you want to know why I'm saying what I'm saying. Japan was the most beautiful country I have ever visited. The order, the design, the food, the particular quality of Japanese attention to things. I hold it in extraordinary regard. But Japan does not let you in. It is not unkind about it. It is gracious and wonderful, and you are, throughout, a guest being treated with exquisite courtesy. The courtesy is the point, and also the barrier. I was treated better in Japan than almost anywhere I have traveled. I was never, for a single moment, anything other than a foreigner being treated well. Italy I love in a way that I will love until I die. I have been 4 times. The food, the art, the architecture, the particular Italian talent for beauty in everyday things. A doorway, a coffee cup, a 20-second exchange with a shopkeeper that feels like an entire relationship. But Italy is for Italians in a way that is cheerful and complete. You are welcome. You are peripheral. The life happening around you is deeply Italian and entirely without you at its center, which is fine and correct, and also means that you never stop feeling like an audience. Thailand, Vietnam, Portugal, Spain, all extraordinary. All, in the way that matters to me now, places I visited rather than places I lived. The membrane was always there, polite or impolite, thin or thick, but always there. The Philippines doesn't have the membrane. That is the only way I know to say it. You arrive, and if you are willing to show up consistently and with genuine respect and without the assumption that your foreignness entitles you to anything, the membrane simply doesn't form. People treat you not like a tourist they are managing or a foreigner they are accommodating, but like a person who has arrived and might stay and is therefore worth knowing. The possibility of belonging is extended immediately, which is extraordinary, and then fulfilled over time, which is rarer than extraordinary. It is singular, in my experience. Entirely singular. Let me give you the practical picture, because I know some of you need the numbers before the feelings make sense. My apartment in Dumaguete is 14,500 pesos a month. That is approximately $258 at current rates. I have a balcony, tiled floors that stay cool, a ceiling fan, an air conditioner in the bedroom I use at night. In Portland, my apartment was $1,340 a month and had a parking space I didn't use because I had sold my car, because Portland's parking had become a monthly argument I didn't want to have anymore. Electricity runs me about $52 a month. Water is $8. Internet, and I need decent internet because I write, which I'll come back to, is $30. I have help 3 times a week from a woman named Gloria, who has, in the year and a half I have known her, reorganized my kitchen, introduced me to her extended family, taught me to make 3 Filipino dishes with degrees of success she rates diplomatically, and become one of the people I would call in an emergency. She cost me $58 a month and would not accept a raise until I attached it to an increase in her hours, which she finally agreed to because she is practical, and I was persistent. Food is where the numbers stop feeling real to anyone in America. My weekly market spend for fresh fish, vegetables, fruit, and the miscellaneous items that make a kitchen work, between $28 and $35. I eat out most evenings, a full meal at a local place, rice, a main dish, something green, a cold drink, costs between $1.75 and $2.50. I have not eaten a meal in this country that cost more than $12, and that meal was at a restaurant that would have been fine dining in Portland. My total monthly expenses, including everything, rent, utilities, food, Gloria, transportation, the prescription medications that cost a third of what they cost in Oregon, the occasional splurge, run between $620 and $680. My retirement income, between Social Security and a small teacher's pension from 28 years in the Portland School District, is $2,100 a month. I am saving, consistently and without sacrifice, more than $1,400 every single month on a teacher's retirement. That sentence would have been incomprehensible to me 5 years ago. But I want to say what I said before and mean it more precisely. The money is the door. What's on the other side of the door is the life. And the life is what no spreadsheet captures. Let me tell you about the writing, because it's the thing I'm proudest of and the most unexpected. I always wrote essays, journals, the occasional short story that I would finish and put in a drawer and never show anyone. Because teaching other people's writing for 28 years does something to your confidence about your own. In Portland, I had time and tools and no particular reason not to write. I did not write. The days were comfortable and uneventful, and I was not, I understood in retrospect, awake enough to have anything to say. In Dumaguete, I started writing on my second month. A piece about the Palenque, then a piece about the boulevard, then a longer thing about what it felt like to arrive in a country that noticed you. I put it on a small blog I started with no expectation of anyone reading it. People read it. Then more people read it. A woman in Ohio emailed me to say she'd been sitting at her kitchen table at 2 a.m. with her own version of the question I'd been trying to answer, where do I actually belong? And something I'd written had made her feel like the question was answerable. I am writing more now, at 69, than I did in the 20 years before. Not because the Philippines gave me talent or time, both of which I had before. Because it gave me something to be awake about. Because being inside a life rather than managing a life produces, I have found, an entirely different quality of attention. The 37 countries gave me material. The Philippines gave me the reason to use it. I want to be honest about what's hard, because this is not a brochure, and you've given me your time. The heat in April and May is not a gentle warmth. It is the kind of full-body, relentless, negotiation-free hot that the word heat doesn't fully capture, and you adapt to it over months in a way that happens gradually enough that you don't notice it until you realize you've stopped cursing under your breath at noon. The bureaucracy of the visa process requires patience that I am still developing. The power goes out with a regularity that I have made my peace with, and a timing that still occasionally catches me mid-sentence on a video call, which Daniel finds funnier than I do. For serious medical care, the calculus is real and must be taken seriously. The routine care here, and I say this as someone who has seen doctors in 12 countries and has formed opinions, is excellent, affordable, conducted in English, and delivered with a warmth that the American medical system stopped offering somewhere around 1987. For anything complex, you plan for Cebu City or Manila. I have a plan. I have insurance. I do not pretend this requires no thought. I miss things. I miss Daniel in the way that is its own permanent weather system, present all the time at varying intensities. I miss the specific quality of a Pacific Northwest autumn, which is its own kind of beautiful, and which the Philippines cannot replicate, because it has its own seasons, and they are not those. I miss Powell's books in Portland, with the specific ache of someone who spent 28 years teaching literature and believes that a great independent bookstore is one of the highest achievements of human civilization, and there is a loneliness that does not entirely lift, even now, even after a year and a half. You will always be, in some essential way, the foreigner here. At the deepest moments of celebration, in the old songs and the shared references, and the history in the bones of a place, there is a small gap where you feel it. I feel it. I am not pretending otherwise. But here is what I want to say about that gap, and this is the thing I most want to leave you with. I had that gap in Portland. I had it in Japan and Portugal and Thailand, and all the beautiful, generous, insufficient places I passed through for 15 years looking for the answer to a question I couldn't name. The gap there had no explanation attached to it. It was just absence, formless and permanent. Here, the gap makes sense. Here, I have a reason for it. And around the reason, people have extended a warmth that no amount of beauty or spectacle or extraordinary food ever provided in 36 other countries. I will take a logical gap wrapped in genuine belonging over a senseless gap wrapped in gorgeous scenery every single time. I am 69 years old. I have been to 37 countries. I have stood on glaciers and walked ancient cities and eaten in places that made me understand why people build whole lives around the pursuit of good food. I have been moved by beauty in more forms than I can count. I have been grateful, repeatedly and genuinely, for the privilege of all of it. And nothing, not Iceland, not Japan, not Italy, not the sunset in Cape Town that may be the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Nothing has done what a small city in the Philippines did for a woman who had spent 15 years looking for a place that would let her in. They let me in. They let me in within 2 weeks, without my having done anything particularly to deserve it, and they have not stopped letting me in since. That is 37 countries of comparison and one clear answer. If you have been to 37 countries and none of them answered the question, or if you have been to none of them and you are sitting somewhere wondering whether the question even has an answer, I want to tell you what the retired librarian from Seattle told me at that forum in Portland, the sentence I wrote down and read 3 more times on the drive home. The difference is that they let you in. Go find out what that feels like. I promise you, it is nothing like anything you have felt before.